Thank you. It is an honor, privilege, and great responsibility to have served in this office for a number of years. My parents drilled into me that you give back to your community and your church. Your church and your community gives you life and gives you opportunities, and life's not fair. Not everybody gets the same opportunities, but whatever opportunities you have is given to you by your community, and you give back to your community. That was just drilled into me as a kid, and it's in my DNA. And I have no vested or personal interest, no narrow vested or personal interest in serving on the city council. I'm not trying to build a resume to get anywhere else. I've got a job I love, and every community I've worked in, I've given back to the community, and that's how I see this service. And we are accomplishing a lot, and we have been accomplishing a lot since I got on the council in a steady way since 2007, and before that, going back to the administration of Don Parrott. Our democracy works well when people are well informed and participating. And with regard to the well-informed, there is so much at all levels of government. There is so much bluster and boasting and spin and rhetoric. And your job, with the help of the media, hopefully, is to critically analyze all of the rhetoric that you hear so that you can determine as best as possible the truth of the matter. I encourage you to do that. I wish you well as you try to sift through all of that, not only in this campaign, but in other campaigns and levels of government. And also, I encourage you to participate and get your friends to participate. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to start out and say thank you to the Greenville Daily Reflector for putting this debate on. I want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight and listen to a couple men talk about what their visions are for Greenville. My name is Erik Anderson. I'm running for City Council at large. You can find more about me on electerikanderson.com. A few things. I represent a public service when I was in the Marine Corps and I really truly believe this, that every citizen, this is what your responsibility is to do. And I believe in an open, transparent government, one that is going to let every citizen know what's going to go on. Now, there are some citizens that don't care to know, but our job is to at least try to inform them of what's going on in Greenville and making sure that they have the best and most informed knowledge so they can make an informed decision on who the candidates are going to be, who their elected officials are going to be, and what things that they're going to vote for, if they're going to go vote on bonds or issues like that. But another big thing of me is that I want a balanced budget, something that works for Greenville, and make sure that we don't raise taxes on issues or ideas that don't need to be raised at that time. Thank you very much for coming out tonight, and thank you for putting this on.
Thank you. Okay, in our first round of questions, we will address safety issues. Mr. Mercer, you'll start. Greenville has seen 5 pedestrians killed this year in spite of ongoing efforts to educate people about crosswalks, and the crosswalks are not all that safe either. What can be done to address this issue?
Well, this is a concern. This has gotten appropriately a lot of press lately. 5 is a terrible number for a city of our size. There's a couple of ways to approach this, kind of long-term, big way of thinking, planning, and then more specifically, in terms of the big issue, the decisions we make now about planning and traffic patterns and how we're going to build our city are going to determine what the pedestrian fatalities are years from now. And so what we're seeing now, to some degree, is a result of poor planning and people on the council many years ago who perhaps caved into narrow special interest and did not build a city that had the kind of quality and the kind of traffic patterns that we need. Greenville Boulevard is a great example of caving into narrow special interest and giving us the mess that we've got now out there. And so that's part of the big issue. It's very hard for elected officials and politicians to think way down the road, but that's one thing we have to do. In terms of more specifics, in March, the City Council and the DOT worked together to look at one particular problematic area, which is down 10th Street. And we are going to see some improvements there, and we're going to see some improvements across the city. And we have to keep pushing DOT to work on that. But I can tell you, there's no quick fix and magic bullet to the problems that are facing us right now. And that's why retrofitting and going back and trying to fix something that was messed up in the past is hugely expensive and often impractical. And that's why we have to work on what we can now, absolutely, but we also have to get people on the council who will not cave into special interests and who understand the importance of long-range planning so that some future politician doesn't have to deal with this 5, 10, 15 years from now.
I hope he wasn't referring to me as a special interest, but came in. I do agree with my opponent, and we need to make sure that we are planning for the future and future developments. My opponent stated earlier that he's been on the council now for 8 years. Well, the largest development that we've seen is over the last 10, 15 years in Greenville itself. So what is really being done over this time? Now, this is something that we really need to look at a budget. I've ran on this on a couple of different elections on roads, bridges, and schools, and this is the main focus that any kind of elected government should have. And the biggest thing is to make sure that we have enough sidewalks and walkways and make sure our speed limits are directly correlating with the amount of traffic in that specific area. I don't know if a lot of you knew this, but my wife was actually hit by a car when she was attending ECU. That just happened. I mean, this is something that goes on a lot more than just the 5 fatalities. This is something that goes on a lot more and isn't reported or isn't, looked at more closely. But big thing is you got to start right at the beginning. You got to draw up the plans. You got to make sure that in that area that you're trying to develop, let's just take Regency Boulevard, if some of you know where that is. That area has 2 lanes on both sides and a nice median in between. It's going to be a great road if anybody's been on that road. But we have to make sure that we are planning for the future before we give out any zoning permits, making sure that the sidewalks are in, making sure that the traffic, making sure that we have crosswalks and walkways so that people can get to and from wherever they're going. Thank you.
Any response, Mr. Mercer?
Well, I forgot that we have a rebuttal. Yeah, and let me say that Erik and I agree on a lot of things, and comments that I make in general about politicians and elected officials and campaigns are not necessarily directed at him. In fact, if there may be some things that Erik and I disagree on, and if there are, I'll probably refer specifically to my opponent and my disagreement with him. But I'm talking more general, obviously, with regard to the issues, this particular issue. Anyway, I think that you can you can look at a situation like Greenville Boulevard and Regency, which Erik referred to, and you can look at the difference there. And you can look, it just gives you a different psychology driving down those roads. We love all the businesses on Greenville Boulevard, and but it's a mess to get through. It didn't have to be that way. And I can tell you specifically, the council, the time and the decisions that were made that led to Greenville Boulevard being what it is.
Mr. Anderson, you want to respond?
Real quick, like we just both reiterated, we have to make sure that we're planning for the future now. And fixing those things are going to be more expensive now, but we have to do it. And making sure that's what the bonds are usually for. They're not for pet projects, but they're for fixing those existing things that we have budgeted for. Thank you.
Okay, our second question on safety. What would you do to fight the perception that Greenville is a crime-ridden city? And starting with you, Mr. Anderson.
Could you say that question again? I'm sorry.
What will you do to fight the perception that Greenville is a crime-ridden city?
I think for the most part of the last, we had a certain crime prevention that we were doing for numbers of years in the 80s and 90s, which was, hiring more police officers to go into certain areas. I think we've seen that isn't the most effective way to police our neighborhoods. A big thing that we need to do is making sure that we're engaged in the community, making sure that the officers know, making sure that we have body cameras, that's a big thing. Making sure that we're doing everything that we can possibly can, and making sure that there's, street lights where there need to be street lights. That's one thing that I'd like to see Greenville Utilities step up and do. Making sure that we have street lights, making sure that the shadows are covered. And this is a big thing that I'm worried about with the 10th Street connector, is that it's going to offer more shadows, more times that you can hide under concrete and do things that you probably shouldn't do. And we have to do more community engagement. I'm not saying that it's up to par, but we need to do that. And as a community, we have to help each other and help law enforcement make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can. If somebody is out there trying to get somebody or whatever they're trying to do, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can possible as a community. Thank you.
Mr. Mercer.
Well, perception is a concern because Greenville, as the hub of Eastern North Carolina, that's an advantage, right? We have lots of advantages here as the hub of Eastern North Carolina. However, that comes with it some deficits, and one of the deficits is that a lot of the news comes out of here and maybe gets more coverage than in other places in Eastern North Carolina. I mean, my mom, before she went to rest home in Wilmington, lived in the Duplin County in the middle of nowhere, and yet she would call me up all concerned about the crime in Greenville and how dangerous it is, and I shouldn't go downtown and all this. So there's the perception right there. I've seen that in my mother. I'm not sure that, I think this is some responsibility of the media here, but I'm not sure the city council can do much about the perception. I think what we do, and this is our way of addressing the perception, is actually address crime. And in order to do that, you have to have long-term solutions, things like youth programs and reentry programs and things like that address crime in the long term. And then you have to have short-term programs, and we need to have traditional law enforcement. Our officers need to be able to do hardcore policing when needed, but also combine that with community policing and with all kinds of programs that preventive type of programs. So I wish, again, on crime there was a quick, easy fix, but it is a process of working on all of these fronts to try to make this community safe. And I will say that making this community safe should be our #1 priority. Nothing else matters. Long-term planning, zoning, or traffic, nothing else matters if the city's not safe. So it is of critical importance.
Sorry to interrupt, but there is a blue Toyota across the street that's blocking a driveway. If anybody here is driving that car, will you please? Thank you.
Any response to that, Mr.
I totally agree with my opponent on this. I mean, this has to be a focus of all of our residents in our community. And as a Greenville City Council, we can do something. I mean, we can make sure that we're walking downtown, making sure that everything is going right, making sure that we're engaging the community, making sure that everybody has what they need to do whatever they need to do to keep their neighborhood safe. This also has to be done through the community. It's not, you can have 1 million police officers, but that won't make it any more safe, because it just won't. It'll turn it into a police state, and we don't want that either. So we want to make sure that we're engaging the community and making sure that everybody has what they need. If they do need a law enforcement personnel down there, then we make sure that our response times are good and getting down there. And I think we've done a pretty good job as a city doing that. I just think, like my opponent said, the media is based out of here. So this is a big hub, but at least we're not dealing with some of the things that downtown Kinston or downtown Newburgh are dealing with. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't think I have ever, since 2007, I don't think I've ever turned down any request that came from the police department through the manager, which is the way those requests come. I don't think I've ever turned anything down or asked serious questions about it in terms of we shouldn't do this. So again, I think it's unfortunate that the size, the part of our budget, the percentage of our budget that has to go for this, it's unfortunate commentary on the society we live in, but that's the situation. I do think with regard to perception, one particular perception that we have made progress on is regard to downtown. And even my mom now, I think, when she visits, would be willing to go downtown at 7, 8, 9 o'clock and have dinner. So we've really turned the corner, or I sense that we've turned the corner on the uptown area in terms of perception. People still appropriately are very careful late at night, real late at night, on the weekends, but I think we have turned the corner on the perception there, and more people are going downtown to have dinner and various events.
Okay, our next question, still on safety. Do you believe there should be stricter gun control measures in the city of Greenville? If so, what measures? If not, why not?
Okay, this is an issue that is being discussed at the county level. I grew up on a farm in Duplin County. I grew up around guns. I grew up hunting and fishing, and when I was in the Boy Scouts, I won a medal for marksmanship out at the rifle range. I have support the Second Amendment. I have no problems with the Second Amendment at all. As someone who has some training in and has also practiced in the clinical psychology field, I can tell you, and has worked with mentally ill patients, I can tell you that I absolutely do not want myself, my family, my mom, or any of the citizens of Greenville to be in the presence of a society where guns are in the hands of people who they should not be, who are mentally ill or have anger management or whatever. And so this is a complicated issue to protect our Second Amendment rights and combine that with having a safe city and a safe society. We just had another death just a few days ago. I'm not saying this has anything to do with what the gun laws were, but I'm just saying we have to work really hard every way we can to have an increasingly safe society. And so this is an issue that if it comes before the council, I will study it very, very carefully, and those are the principles, the two principles by which I will sort that issue out.
Can you restate the question again?
Yes. Do you believe there should be stricter gun control measures in the city of Greenville? If so, what measures? If not, why not?
I do not believe that the city should mandate any stricter gun laws, but I do believe that at the county or really at the state level, that we should have more safety classes and making sure that, and more background checks and on all that. I really am a huge thing about background checks and safety classes and safety courses on actually how to properly maintain your weapon, making sure that you know how to properly use your weapon, and making sure that, you know, this isn't like a purchase. You turned 18, I'm going to go buy a shotgun and have it in your house. So I'm really big on gun safety. It's not something that we can actually mandate. We'll spend half the time with the city attorney in court over it because it is a Second Amendment right. So thank you.
I think the only thing I would add to that is that, as with any issue that comes before the council, you know, I'll certainly try to bring in a fair and objective, based on the facts, thoughtful process to it, and we'll deliberate about it and be open to ideas. And I will also want to know what the citizens of Greenville are interested in. I try to stay in good communication with the citizens through my newsletter, through town hall meetings in various ways. Of course, I was elected to make the hard decisions, so it's not a matter of just doing a poll and then voting that way, but I certainly want to know what the citizens of Greenville think and feel about this, and I've already gotten a few, again, you can't draw a conclusion about this, but I've gotten a few responses already, for the most part expressing concern about safety.
No, I think we're good.
Okay, we'll move into a new category, economic development and planning. And I will attempt to read a question from the audience.